in a few seconds, okay?
I love it. Hello, everybody. It is Wadih Wednesday, and today I am so excited that here at Community for International Arab, we are going to talk about Arab men and their emotional health and wellness. So, to anyone that's joining, welcome, welcome. So, before we get started and introduce someone that I really, really am just so excited about being in this field, Mehdi Rasul. Before I introduce him, as we do every live, where are you all joining in from? Let us know where you're coming in from. And then for now, ladies, only the men can answer. So let them answer. For all the men that are on this live, growing up, were the men around you allowed to talk about feelings? Okay, so for anyone that's joining, let us know where you're coming in from. And then for the men, please answer. Growing up, were the men around you allowed to talk about feelings? So as people are hopping on the live, we'll start with that. And so for those that are new, this is Community for International Arab. My name is Tiffany Totah. I'm a marriage and family therapist. And today I am joined by Mehdi Rasul, Associate Licensed Professional Counselor, a licensed drug and alcohol abuse counselor who specializes in men's mental health, helping them create generational health. Talk about a pioneer. Mehdi, welcome, welcome. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but no one can see you, Mehdi, on TikTok yet. So can you please make sure that you just join the TikTok live?
Yes, 100%. You would think at 27 I would know how to do these things, and yet
It's okay.
here I
It's a lot. But we can see you on Instagram and YouTube. We're so happy to have you. We just miss you on TikTok now.
All right. Thank you for that. Let's see. So as we're getting that started, let's see. We have Hanutawi. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Where is everyone else coming in from as we get Mehdi on the TikTok? Let's see. Let me check this out. Let's see. Oh, Dubai. Welcome. Hi, Rania. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening. Wherever you are. Can you try to do a ولك mega? Okay. خلاص انتو. Try and do AMSR. بلشنا with the silliness.
Just a moment.
Welcome, everybody. We've got Muhammad. We have Lena from Jordan Amman. Welcome. It's fun. It's fun to engage them sometimes. The public shaming has its place. We've got Cairo. We've got Rami. Welcome. We've got Not Me Sorry. Fatima. Oh, we've got Egypt's in the house. Welcome, welcome. Sector 15. Kif halkom. Welcome. All right. Mira, do I need to do anything on my end?
No, just Mehdi, once he requests to join, you just accept the request. That's it.
Okay, tell you. So we're getting started. All right. So today, everybody, we are going to talk about Arab men and their emotional health and wellness. And the reason why this topic is so important is a lot of times we talk so much about the strength of our Arab men and how incredibly strong they are. Yet I'm not quite sure we talk enough about, they're incredible providers, the emotional restraint that we see, their honor and reputation, their ability to rally together. We've seen them do incredible things during times of war and migration. We've seen our Arab men protect our identity, dignity, and stability as a people. Yet I'm not quite sure we have done a good job as a culture to honor their stress or to speak on and create awareness around their stress, their pressures, their burnout, their responsibility overload. And so today we are going to have Mehdi Rasool talk about these things and to really ensure that this is a space to honor our Arab men and also to give them space and to bear witness to how much they've been carrying. And with this live, we hope that with the techniques and tools and understanding to make that load a little lighter and to do a better job at uplifting them. All right, let's see. Are we still trying to get on TikTok? Let's see.
I should have it here in just a moment.
No, take your time.
Apologize.
No, that's okay. Hope I can
Alright,
see a
if
different
Mira-
angle of this.
Mira,
Mhm.
Mira, if you want to give me a hand here, please, and how do I
Yes, of course.
ask to join?
Are you open? Did you open the
Oh,
TikTok?
I invited you. Here, I got it. I invited him. So just accept the invite.
Perfect.
All right. Let's see. Katz family for
Send it.
you. Are you in America? Yes, I am in the United States. I am in California. For those that are new to Community for International Adam. Well, we're trying to hear him out. You see how
Could you send it one
impatient?
more time?
Arab men already impatient. Yalla into. That's part of the problem.
Would you mind sending me
Stemnu.
the invite one more time, Tiffany?
Yeah. Balashna. Okay, let's see. I'm going to send you the invite. This is a time to be patient with us. We're doing big things here. Send the invite. Let's see. Let's see. I don't see it here anymore.
Okay, Mehdi, can you open the live on TikTok and you just look at the bottom of the live? You should be able to see somewhere you can add a comment, and then on the right you should be able to see a rose and then two people, like two human beings. Do you see a picture of like two?
Yes.
Yes, you just click on it and just request. That's it.
Got you.
Okay. I hope it's easy.
You would think it would be. If you think it would be. Here we go.
Okay, take your time.
Tiffany's live, people, and request. There we go. All
Yes.
right.
There we go. We're good now. See? There we go. All right. We are back in action.
Let me make sure
I hear some feedback.
that's probably on my end. This should be fine now.
All right. All right, everybody. We are back in action talking about Arab men and emotional health and wellness. And I'm joined by Mehdi Rasool, Associate Licensed Professional Counselor. And so, Mehdi, let's start the conversation.
100%. 100%. Allow me to introduce myself real quick. So my name is Mehdi Rasool, licensed conjugal abuse counselor, soon to be licensed professional associate. I am a Palestinian American. I'm a Muslim therapist. I am, as of right now, hopefully this will change, but as of right now, I am the only male Arab Muslim therapist in the state of Tennessee. I lived for about 10 years of my life in the West Bank, so from the ages of 10 to 18. Came back to the States after that. Went to the University of Memphis. That's where I got my bachelor's in psychology, my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and for the last 2 years and some change, I have been a private practice clinician here in Memphis, Tennessee.
All
So
right.
that is my overall CV.
Welcome, welcome. So let's talk about what in your practice, what you've noticed, or some of the themes around Arab men and mental health and emotional health.
Sure, 100%. I have this analogy that I drafted really early in my career after having a few sessions with a few Arab men in particular. I think it very much encompasses sort of the general idea as to how Arab men have developed this sort of armor over the last few generations. Uh, the analogy stems from something that all men, I feel like, have this in common. If there's one thing I know about men, it's that we love a good samurai movie. That is just something that just resonates with us. And so, much in the ways of uh, how the samurai have their own armor, we as Arab men have our own armor. The analogy here that is very much and sort of in unison with the history behind that kind of stuff is samurai armor was like a family heirloom for a lot of families. It was something that the father or the head of the household would wear in that warrior kind of caste, and it would be very traditional for that armor to get passed down. Now, it would very much um, be something that had like a family crest on it or particular colors, and it very much symbolized the family, the core values of this family, so on and so forth. If the father were to pass or to die in battle or whatever the case may be, that armor then would get passed down to the son or to then the head of the household, and that would become their armor. So they become the representation of the family. Something that I think is really important to sort of specify about that and how that differs from the armor that we as Arab men have is that the Japanese would modify that armor upon it being passed down to better fit the wearer, because not every son is going to have the same, dimensions as their father might. And so what I see with Arab men happening a lot is there is a rigidity in being able to modify our own armor to better fit the times and the context of which we live in today. So a lot of that sort of armor that we possess comes from, as you mentioned earlier, like war, displacement, having to survive, especially here in the West and like in American society. Things like be tough, don't complain, carry the burden, provide and protect, right? Like these are notions that get passed down to us from our fathers, from our grandfathers, from our culture, from our religion. And while there's nothing wrong inherently with the ways in which we're being taught this stuff, there needs to be a emphasis on being able to modify it. And so I think that is principality of our live here today and sort of wanting to I think the tone or the goal for me here today is to redefine and expand that strength, right? Like modify it to better fit the men of today, the Arab men of today, and how to best help them with their strengths.
Mehdi, I love that because I think what often happens uh, when I work with Arab families and they're trying to get their brother or their father into therapy, because there's this fear that we're dismantling, that it's a West thing, that we're dismantling masculinity, when really what you're suggesting and what we're trying to do here is we're upgrading it to the times of today. That for the Arab men, you've been strong for everyone else. And real strength is also knowing how to take care of yourself so that you don't burn out. And I think there's a lot of burnout in our society right now. And I think the work that you're doing is so important that we do shift how we're approaching this for our Arab men.
100%. I do think there is some room for deconstruction of very particular pieces of what our general notion of masculinity is, sort of in the same way that, like, with that Japanese armor, you might have to take a piece or two off to make it better fit, to better apply for what it is that we're doing. But generally speaking, that little piece of deconstructing here and there is only a part of it. The overall general thing that I want airmen to kind of focus on is the like you placed the upgrading it, the modifying it, the redefining, the expanding effectively to make it better suit our needs and our purposes. I had actually, funny enough, a new client today at my practice. We had an intake today, and he came in with very much the same sort of issues that I hear with a lot of men, in that I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. I'm worried about my future. I'm worried about getting married. I'm worried about having to be an adult, like what all these responsibilities are. And I feel ill equipped to handle all of this stuff. But I see all of my peers, all the men around me, and they all tell me that I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. And yet I don't feel like I'm prepared. I don't feel like I can do these things. And now I'm experiencing a lot of what is a scary word for a lot of men in our world, but anxiety. So having a lot of anxiety around these sorts of being having that, I want to succeed and I want to be successful in these ventures, but I don't feel equipped to be able to do so. So what I think is really important is to us to understand that if as a man, if the ventures you're engaging in are not attached to your core values, then a lot of what you're going to be experiencing is that uncertainty, is that confusion, is that sort of fear around tackling these things. And so it's really important that I think we sort of change the way we talk about this stuff because it already feels uncomfortable to engage with it to begin with. Doesn't help if we're talking about like what it is to be a man in this space, that space. Like if I were to tell him that, oh no, all of these notions about what it means to be a man that you have been given by your culture, religion, father, grandfather, if I were to tell them like all that is unhealthy and all that is wrong and all that is not gonna help you, the person is immediately gonna walk out and immediately is not gonna hopefully receive some kind of help that they need because this there's already a wall there, and for me to put a big red sign on that says avoid this wall, what's going to happen is they're going to walk away from the wall.
Understandable, right? Because what you're speaking to is when the client is coming to you in that space of wanting to create some relief around what they're experiencing. And in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mehdi, Arab men engage better through doing.
Oh,
So
100%.
right, than just talking. They, right, solution oriented, so problem solving. Yet many times there wasn't this modeling around effective problem solving. And so teaching or giving them tools on better problem solving skills as an example, or goal setting, right? Because many times the goals were set by the culture, set by the family, or set by a societal expectations versus their own. So it's been dictated. So that skill, so here they're shaming themselves or beating themselves up for not knowing how to do something, yet a lot of that was done for them. Is that
Something that 100%, something that I always will start with when I'm having a new client, a new man, even if he's not an Arab man in particular, like most men in general across the board. That's something else that is, I think, really important to emphasize is that while Arab men have there's unique qualities in how they've been socialized and developed and taught and raised and all the other things. A lot of that is universal to men as well, because effectively manhood or masculinity broadly in this day and age has the same definition or connotation across cultures. A lot of men who will come into my office, whether they be Arab or non-Arab, some of the first questions I'll ask them is like, "What does it mean to be a man to you, and who taught you what that meant?" And 9 times out of 10, the answer is protect, provide, do something that makes you feel proud. And then I learned that from my father, grandfather, uncle, or I'll have one or two people tell me the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. But generally speaking, if we all have this very same definition across the board of what it means to be a man, and then we look at things like the suicide rates of men, 70% of suicides happen or completed by men. So if we're all operating under the exact same standard, exact same like set of rules, expectations, and across the board we're not doing so well, then there needs to be some kind of adjustment here. At least that's how I would view it, right? So to your point of like problem solving, men in general are very good about that. Like 'cause that's how we've been socialized to think, and that's how we've been socialized to act. So engaging in particular modalities or particular ways of helping men analyze the way they problem solve and to better modify it or adjust it to what their problem is, think goes a long way for a lot of Arab men, especially when we take into consideration these sort of problems that they experience, like the identity conflict of being an Arab Muslim man or an Arab Christian man for that matter in Western society, right? Like those very unique problems that we face of I'm not Muslim enough or Arab enough for my American friends. I'm not I'm not Muslim Arab enough for my Muslim Arab friends. I'm not American enough for my American friends. And how do I deal with this? How do I have a relationship with people in this country or in this world, right? Whether it be romantic or otherwise. A lot of confusion, a lot of things, and the tools that we're given are only useful for a number of things, for a handful of things, and then you're kind of left to figure out how to navigate these things on your own. And that can be really scary, really like, nerve-wracking of a situation to be in.
What do you think some of the emotional consequences would be of that, of those dynamics? What have you seen in
Oh,
your practice?
there is a quote from a book that I love very dearly, and I think would be really great for a lot of men to read. Maybe not if they're like just beginning to kind of go on their journey of self-discovery or trying to understand themselves, maybe a little bit later down the line. The book is called The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. There's a
Well,
quote in there, love her, right? She's great. There's a
amazing.
quote in there that I'm going to paraphrase a little bit that basically says, the first act of violence that any and all men engage in is that self-mutilation of their emotional intelligence. And so thinking about what that means, that self-mutilation of emotional intelligence, so cutting yourself off from the emotional sides of yourself, your feeling, because why does that happen? It's because, well, the society at large, the systems and structures we live under want us to work. They want us to be engaged in work. They want us to make money for the people, for our bosses, so we can send that money over to our landlords, right? Like it's always just about the men having to provide, men having to work. And emotions get in the way of you being able to, work 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week. That burnout that we were going to get into, you know, people will assume that like, if I have emotions, that means I'm going to burn out because those are going to be the things that make me stop working. If I take a minute to feel what I'm feeling, then I can't work, right? Like if I take a minute, I might crash, I might cry, I might completely, uh, as they say, crash out. And so the consequence there of not being able to engage with the emotion or engage with some of the more like metaphysical aspects of being a human, of being a male. The consequence there is you deprive yourself of a whole aspect of your life that is the relations you can form with people, the beautiful experiences you can have of building a family, because you need to be tapped into those things to raise children effectively and in a healthy way. Science has shown us, evidence has shown us that like you need to be somewhat in touch with the parts of you, to use IFS language, different parts of you that experience things in a way that you, in your like logical reasoning mind, are not going to be able to quantify. And
That's
so
that. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to wrap it up with like that's so that's some of the consequence is that you are missing out on a whole aspect, many different aspects and domains of life when you don't engage with your feelings, your emotions, these things.
I absolutely love that. And part of what you're speaking to is, can we as a society normalize emotional expression for our Arab men? And I think someone in the comments wrote, boys do not cry. And that's not just an Arab thing, that's men in
Yeah,
general. And so, yes, I think what you're speaking to is, let's normalize emotional expression and to have us help men reframe that emotional, not as weakness, but as again, upgrading into more of a fullness of who they are versus a more suppressed version of who they are. And that's true for both Arab men and Arab women.
100%, 100%.
All right, let's slow down, because I think Mita gave us the time clock. We need to look at comments and questions. So let's take a look. Mita, what is happening in the comments land?
We have a few questions. So one of them is from Hanute. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but they said, do you think that men themselves are victims of the patriarchy society?
I love this question. I love this question so much.
Me too.
The short answer is yes.
Yes.
And here's I'll even go a step further. They are the primary target of the patriarchy. So they are, the patriarchy is what inherently makes men, like, these notions of boys do not cry, like our friend Mo mentioned earlier, and these, like, do not complain, provide and protect, right? Like, something I have this conversation, and a lot of women might get mad with me over this one, and I apologize. I do not mean to, like, diminish the hardship and the strife and the struggle of having to fight the patriarchy, but it needs to be said that, like, men are not inherently violent. They're not inherently monsters. It is through the subjugation of the patriarchy that they experience that, turns them into that. And then through that subjugation of them, we have the subjugation of women. And so it's to answer your question effectively, like, yes, they are, and they're the ones who get hit first or affected first. And then through their subjugation, we have the subjugation of women. So, yeah, the patriarchy doesn't inherently, like, want to make women's lives awful. They want to make men into these emotionless work machines. And through that, you have the removal of emotion. And then through that, you have these notions of, like, being a man means to provide, protect, to engage in violence. And so when we see these these rich billionaire men doing all this really weird stuff on these really weird places out in the middle of the ocean or whatever, right? Like, that's the personification of the totality of it all, in that these men have been taught by the system that women and children are there for their satisfaction, for their money making, for their, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I could go on and on about this particular, like, patriarchy part.
So I'm also going to put something out there that I've seen in my practice, and this is something for women and Arab women to be careful as well in how we move in the world supports patriarchal beliefs. So I've seen where an Arab man, particularly the younger generation of men, will express a vulnerability or share a feeling. And I've watched where the woman will shut him down. There's an intolerance of perhaps his tears or his expression of fear of not knowing how to do something or not being able to provide, or being able to acknowledge that there are days where he may not want to get up or the anxiety may be debilitating. And I've watched women suppress him even further by doing the very things society does to them. And so it's going to be, and I get that, because there's so many factors that go into why someone would respond to her partner or their partner in that way. So it's important for how we all can support one another to be able, when someone is expressing a vulnerability, to be able to hold the space for that and not exacerbate these patriarchal beliefs. Now, that I think is something that takes time and work and tools and awareness. And that's what we're trying to do here. Like, I'm not sure of too many people that were taught these things or modeling of these things. I know my generation, we certainly didn't have any modeling of any of this.
Yeah,
at
no,
all.
not at all. Like I said, I'm the only one of my kind in the state of Tennessee. And that's Tennessee, like, you know what I mean? So it is effectively it's a systemic issue. It's a systemic failure. That's what I really want men and women to understand. I don't even men, I don't want to understand is that, like, neither the man nor the woman is inherently any which way. We all get taught, socialized, and learned into our behaviors, into the ways we engage with one another, and the ways we think, and all that kind of stuff. And so, if something is wrong, or if something doesn't feel right, or if it's not in a place where it should be, it's not that it's your fault. It's that your material conditions were not set up in a way for you to achieve that. You didn't have access. You weren't, and so, it's not fair to be like, "Why aren't you in touch with your emotions, husband?" Well, because my dad didn't know how to teach me that. My mom didn't know how to teach me that, right? And so you don't get to learn how to do these things, and which is why I think it's so important that we also recognize, to the earlier point, like, if a man attaches his value to his ability to provide in this economy and the state of the world, right, it's getting harder and harder and harder to be able to buy a home, raise a family, have some kind of, like, stay on your own 2 feet. This isn't back in the 1950s where you can buy a house for $16,000. You can get a one-bedroom, one-bathroom for 160,000. Like, it's incredibly, incredibly hard. And so when all of your value as a man is attached to your ability to provide and protect and so on and so forth, and the world around you isn't set up for you to succeed that way, that would explain why the suicide rate for men is so high, right? Because if I don't have a home, a wife, and children, a degree by the age of 30, then something must be more wrong with me, right? And so that's a very, very harmful frame of mind narrative to hold.
I appreciate that. And I know you may be speaking more to maybe an Arab American experience. My sense is abroad, it may function a little differently. What I've seen abroad is one of the things with Arab men is how do we let's see, I lost my train of thought. I think part of it is how do we integrate the culture versus work against it? How do we incorporate this? Because I think back home or abroad, their stressors are so much different than
Oh yeah.
what we experience here, particularly in the United States. But
Something that I've always
oh,
Go
that
ahead,
was
sorry.
sorry, I lost my train of thought. The
Okay.
suicide looks different. It's not direct. People have to remember, and I don't want to get too off the rails on this. Suicidality it doesn't necessarily mean people do all kinds of things. They will do passive suicidal ideation or passive suicidal behaviors. And that's what I see more abroad is that people will perhaps drink, do drugs, which I know we don't talk about, and it's very hidden in our culture, but it's very much there. And that men will do things to high rates of heart disease. Now, I'm not a public health practitioner, but I see high rates of heart disease is huge in our culture, and that comes from stress. And so what are we doing so they die young? And is that not, and they don't take care of themselves, or maybe they don't have access to health resources. So are there other resources we can do? And that's what we're doing here, is helping them lower their stress levels by having awareness around that. All right, Mira, are we okay? Let's see, where are we?
Yeah, we have a question from Rombalagbo. I'm not sure how to spell your name, but it says, what can we actively model or teach our kids and babies to counteract this?
I love that. Mahdi, any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, very good question. I think the biggest piece is, when we say what can we model or teach, you can't model if you yourself are not comfortable with emotion, right? So it's
Right.
going to be hard. It's going to be hard for anyone to be able to model or teach their child emotional intelligence, coping skills, anything like that, if they themselves do not feel comfortable with these, or with their own narratives of what that is for them, and so on and so forth. So I think step one is to either engage in therapy yourself or just begin thinking about these different kinds of things for yourself and kind of analyzing and reflecting on, like, what do these things mean for me? How have I engaged with this stuff in my own life? How was I taught these different things? you have to be able to look inward first before you can outwardly express. It's super important, I think, to preface that. But once we get through that part, I think, allowing your child to cry. Like let the boys that you have, let the girls that you have cry. Don't shame them for being able to, like don't shame them for that. Don't shame them for how they're feeling. Ask them questions, right? Like in your attempt to try to understand what they're feeling, they will understand that it's okay to feel this way. That's why mom and dad are trying to understand how I'm feeling, so I can understand how I'm feeling. And that asking these questions and engaging with this kind of stuff is very normal and very healthy. So I think self-reflection first, and then, just emulating that to your children. Ask them questions about their own how they're feeling about certain things, and then telling them it's okay to feel that way. And then you go from there.
I love that. I'm going to ask anyone who's on this live, and uh, I'm going to ask the men to answer this. So, ladies, let's give the men an opportunity to respond, please, and then you can chime in. When you showed emotion growing up, whether it was crying or frustration, what were you told? And hatuha either fil Arabi or Inglisi, it doesn't matter. Mira can translate, or Mahdi, you can translate as well, right? To what messages, if you cried or if you had an emotional feeling, and your parents or the people that raised you, what were you told? What were some things you were told just by, Mahdi was saying, for you to create an awareness, and that awareness begins with what were you told growing up around emotions? To hide it because you're the man. I love that. Yes, you're a man, right? I would hear that. Not from me, but like I would hear what they would say. Inta zalama. Inta zalama. Heard that a lot. Right? And I would say, well, no, he's a 5-year-old little boy. I'm like,
Right. Right.
yet, like, Uskut, don't be like the Banat.
I think a lot of that is also in terms of like Arab men in particular. A lot of that gets, I think, like I see that happening with like men trying to tell that to their younger children super early, as opposed to like non-Arab men with their children. They still do, but maybe not as early. And I think that for me, anyways, how I perceive that is because of our unique experience as Arab men in that fighting off war, displacement, surviving all these different things. We kind of have this ingrained psyche in us to prepare our children, prepare our boys to be able to handle that stuff as early as possible because it's just a super relevant part of their reality, right? Look what's going on right now overseas in our region, in our home, right? Like immediately this stuff is happening. It's omnipresent. As a Palestinian, that's omnipresent all of the time, right? And so trying to get our boys super early into the mind frame of like survival, these are the skills and things you need for survival. That's that self-mutilation of emotional intelligence that happens so commonly with Arab men in particular as well, because of that trying to survive imperialism, trying to survive colonialism, like all of that stuff just is so ingrained in us, in our DNA of trying to fight it, avoid it, survive it, that emotions end up becoming, the bag that's going to slow you down. Or at least that's how, they'll see it.
Mahdi, can we talk about that bag? So, what are some of the hidden signals? So, excuse me, this is either for Arab men or those living with Arab men or who have men in their lives. I have rarely heard an Arab man say, I'm struggling. However, you will see certain behaviors that will indicate they are struggling. What have you seen in Arab men? What are some of the behaviors or things that you see?
I think the biggest one is isolation, for sure. Like a lot of men will distance themselves in their relationships with their partner, with their families, with their children, with no matter what, whoever it is. So if you notice the Arab man in your life becoming a bit more distant, there's something going on, right? If every time you ask them, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" they say, "I'm fine," you're not fine every single like, there's no way. I wish we could all be fine all of the time, and every time that we can answer that question, that's the case, right? Which it's simply just not. And so isolation is the big one. If you notice a change in the way they talk or engage with the people around them. So if they seem a bit like harsher, if they seem a bit more like short-tempered, if they seem a bit more flustered, even like or unsure of themselves, like a lot of that very much is which can be hard to spot, hard to tell. But for those of you who are not the airman themselves, if you are feeling uncomfortable because of something that they're doing or saying, that's also a sign for you that, like, something is going on. If this is someone who you normally feel safe, protected, values you, and all that kind of stuff, and something about it in this recent time feels off or feels weird, that's also an indication for you that, like, there I should probably ask and figure out if there is something here. Whether that Arab man is going to, express that to you or not is a different conversation. It's the conversation we're having, but um, they're not going to be able to express that if they don't feel safe, you know, around you to be able to express that. And it's not your fault if they don't feel safe, mind you. It's, that's how they were brought up to not feel safe around these things in general.
That's right. But what I see a lot of family members do is they emotionally flood the man by Eshmelak, Shusad, right? This intensity, or tell me what's going on, and then they're
Poking and prodding, yeah.
moving them into generally a freeze response in the nervous system, where they will, and then the partner may construe that as he's shutting down, or he doesn't want to engage, he doesn't want to communicate, when in reality he may be emotionally flooded, which then
Yeah.
may lead to the avoidance, the overworking, the irritability that you mentioned, the withdrawal that you talked about, is because there's an emotional flooding. So even recognizing those hidden signals and being aware, and for the men to be aware of, oh gosh, I'm shutting down. Where am I getting emotionally flooded? And asking, what's been weighing on me lately? Sometimes it's just asking some real simple questions to yourself, like, okay, what's been weighing on me lately? Where do I feel the most pressure right now? And also just basic physical complaints. I think someone mentioned in the comments, lovely Liz, so many Arab men dismiss their health and let it get to a place where it's treated, because they will override those physical complaints to keep going, to keep moving, without just slowing down a little bit.
100%.
Slow down and just okay, what's happening with my sleep, my nutrition, my routines, and
Let me tell you, as an Arab man, all of my trauma is in my shoulders and neck. I've had chronic neck and shoulder problems my whole life, right? And no doctor can tell me why it's the case or what it is. They're just so tense and stressed. That's because of the reality in which we live in, right? All that emotion, all that pent up stuff. My own uncle, may he rest in peace, died from a heart attack, and he didn't want to go to the hospital to get it checked out, right? And it's stuff like that that is so omnipresent in our culture, in our communities. It's because it's just it's scary to deal with that stuff, and it feels safer, ironically enough, to go to work and avoid it and to deal with that pain as opposed to just asking yourself what's going on.
I love that, Mehdi. And usually I like to connect, like, if you have shoulder pain, what are the burdens you're carrying, right?
100%.
With neck pain, I always generally make a light, excuse me, lightness. Who's the pain in your neck, right? Or
Yeah.
what's the pain in your neck? And being able to connect with that. And Rania wrote, there is that Arab men will downplay their symptoms. That
Oh, yeah.
that is very, very true. And a lot of times, for those that grew up with angry Arab fathers, underneath that, and Mehdi, correct me if I'm wrong, that underneath that is masking of a sadness that was generally never allowed to express, whether they lost their mother early or they were abandoned by their father or there was physical abuse, emotional abuse. And I know we come from a culture, we don't talk about, a lot of Arab men in our culture are sexually abused.
Okay.
That's for
Oh,
another time and topic.
Time topic. Happy to come back and talk about that one for
I
sure.
would love for you to come back and talk about that.
100%.
But as
But
we're
you're absolutely right. It is a masking of another emotion, and I would even go as far as say that it's not always sadness. It can be really any emotion that the male experience. Because in this day and age, most Arab men and men across the board have been taught that the only emotion that is acceptable for you to express is anger. That's the only one. Because remember, going back to the notions of what it means to be a man, right? Provide, protect, violence, like you need anger to do these things, to engage in violence, to engage in protection or defense, right? Or even to have the drive and the ambition to provide as much as possible. You need a kind of like anger to engage with all of these different things. And so it even you said masking sadness. I've seen Arab men anger to massive joy. They
yes,
they don't allow themselves to be happy
that's
because, like, so they get angry when they see their kids. Like a lot of I remember I've had clients who, like, didn't understand why their father would get so mad at them when they're playing video games in the living room. It's like and, because it's just because they're having fun and joy, and that's not something that men should be engaging in. Like, these are the notions, right? Like, this is how it gets so deeply put into our DNA. So yeah, anger is the only thing that you're taught is okay to experience, and there's so many more emotions. That goes back to my earlier point about like you're missing out on so much of humanity and so much of this life in this world by being angry all the time. But it's not your fault that you're angry all the time. You've taught up, brought up, and brought this way. But give yourself the space to deconstruct. Why am I angry all the time? What's going on here?
that's right. And so that's right. So I know we're getting towards the end of the live, and I always like to leave folks who are on the live with some general things to perhaps, if they're starting to think about their emotional health and wellness, what are some things? Now, you mentioned awareness, just understanding what may be going. What are some practical things or interventions that men can do? And then I'll chime in on how their families can support them in that, if you're okay with that. But what are some things men can do?
One of my favorite skills that I teach a lot of men is this is less of a insight thing and more of just like a coping slash distress tolerance slash patience building kind of exercise. I always refer to it as baby's first meditation. So the way it's called alternating nostril breathing, it's very simple. The premise is basically that you'll take your hand, something like this, you'll close your right nostril with your thumb, you'll inhale through the left, full breath, however long that takes you. You'll hold it for a few seconds, you'll switch. So then after you're gonna close your left nostril, open up the right one, and then exhale out the right, full breath. And then inhale through the right, hold it, switch, exhale through the left, inhale through the left, hold it, switch, exhale through the right. And you will, you know, do this routine for 5, 10. I would say start at 5 minutes daily, every other day, whenever you feel yourself overwhelmed. Do that for 5 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 weeks of doing that for 5 minutes. If move up to 10. Um, so the science behind that is that your nervous system, both of them are connected to your nostrils. So there is like soft reset that you're engaging in as you allow yourself to do this. And it's also very much you're sitting down for 5, 10 minutes, just breathing, just being present in the moment. What your mind should be doing right now is just focusing on the tempo of the breath, making sure that every inhale and every exhale are at the same tempo and that you're at a steady rhythm. Your mind is going to wander naturally because this is not something Arab men are accustomed to, sitting down and not moving and being, present for a few moments. So your mind is going to wander. Your mind's going to think things, cast judgments, whatever the case may be, uh, and that's fine. It's supposed to do that. What you are then supposed to do is just acknowledge that it happened and then bring your focus back. Don't judge it. Don't, be upset that that happened. That's kind of like a push-up effectively. Like every time your mind wanders and you bring it back, you're doing an emotional intelligence push-up is the way that I would like describe that. So don't force yourself to think to lose focus to make more push-ups happen. Let it be organic. But uh, the best times to do this exercise, there are two places that every man feels comfortable in, no matter who they are, where they are. Their bathroom and their car when they get off of work and they get into the driveway. That moment in time is every man's favorite moment in time throughout their day because it's the one place in the driveway in their car after work before they walk into the house. That's the one spot where they can just not think, not worry, decompress, right? I remember before I was a therapist, I was in the service industry. So I was like a restaurant manager and I worked at Starbucks years ago to pay for my bachelor's degree. I'd get off of however many hour work long shifts, drive home, park in my driveway. The second I put my car in park, oh my God, the relief that one would feel, it just immediately put me to sleep. And it's just immediately I crash, go to sleep for an hour, and I wake up, and it's all, that wasn't the healthiest thing to do. So this is a different way for men to be able to take that time where they definitely feel safe. And I know y'all feel safe at that time to engage in a more healthy way of decompression. And then also on the flip side of it, you're also developing distress tolerance. You're also developing the mindfulness practice of being able to just be here and be present. So don't crash, turn the radio off, make yourself comfortable, put a timer on your phone for 5 minutes with a really soft way to get off of a little soft sound so it's not so abrupt of an ending. So yeah, that's one of my favorite things. I've seen a lot of success with that with a lot of guys. And so alternating nostril breathing.
Yes. Mahdi, thank you so much. That, yeah, absolutely. I've seen men, they'll say, I just need a transition. So for those who have men in their household, please remember what Mahdi was speaking to is there may need to be this transition time. And so if they are in the car or they are in the bathroom doing the things that they need to ground themselves, to give them that space. So when a man comes home from a long day at work, yes, you've had a long day with the kids or your own work and it's about how can the two of you communicate to say how much space does one another need to be able to ground, to find your space, and then move forward in your communication. I think a lot of times there isn't that dialogue around, hey, I need 5 minutes, because they weren't taught the emotional language, or none of us were taught the emotional language of asking what we need. And so it's going to be very important that, again, like I said at the beginning of the live, that we all work together to help find those spaces for emotional regulation. All right. Amazing. All right. Let's see. We've got, what's a good resource to find Arab mental health providers? Yeah, that's a really good question. So we do have a link in our bio for the Arab Therapist Directory. I think it's primarily here in the United States. And so you can start there. Mahdi, any other resources maybe you can share where people can find you if they're for your content? If you're in Tennessee.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at Rasul Recovery everywhere, RASUL RECOVERY. Truly any Instagram, TikTok, you'll find me there. I'm on Facebook too, if that matters. I know it's like outdated for a lot of folks, but I'm there too. If you are in Tennessee, whether that be Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, anywhere in Tennessee, I work out of a practice called Navigating Courage Counseling and Consultation. So This is a private practice that is owned by Dr. Justin Dodson. It's a Black-owned, queer-owned private practice. We specialize in working with men. That's very much me and Dr. Dodson's whole bag. We have a couple other clinicians on staff as well who see other people, but at least for me and the practice in general, we specialize in working with men. So if you or a loved one or brother, son, father, husband, whatever the case, boyfriend, whatever the case may be, if you think they need some help, I would encourage you to talk to them. So as in, you can pass them along my information. That's Navigating Courage Counseling Consultation in Memphis, Tennessee.
Thank you, Mehdi. That is wonderful. Mira, can you do me a favor on TikTok? Can you put Mehdi's, can you put that in the comments for folks on TikTok?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't see it go through. Thank you. I should know better. You're always on top of your game. All right. So, Mehdi, thank you so much for this just amazing conversation and much needed conversation. This is one of many conversations I hope we will have to really promote the emotional health and wellness and to strengthen our men. And in turn, we know that in that support, we all win. We all win when we can upgrade how we view emotional health and wellness. I think it is so incredibly important, and for us to redefine what strong man means.
Mm-hmm. I told someone today the strongest thing that you did today was come in here and tell me that you are scared about the stuff that you're anxious about. I mean that, because this is a scary world we live in, and for you to be able to come into some stranger's office and be like, I'm terrified of the shit that's going on in my life. That's, that takes so much strength and courage in and of itself. And it's a shame that Arab men don't see that or recognize it that way. It's not their fault they don't see it or recognize it that way, but you giving me the space to talk on your platform and the work you do, the work I do, the work we all do to try to make this stuff happen is so crucial to spreading that awareness and helping people understand. I truly believe I have what I call a healthy psychological delusion, and that I truly believe that there will be a time, generation or two from now, inshallah, that like we will see a renaissance almost in terms of like the emotional health and wellness of Arab men. I'm glad to be a part of that process. I thank you for being a part of that process and for, like I said, giving me the space to do this. I'll be here next week if you want me to. Like, I'm happy to have this conversation as many times as you want.
Don't worry about that. We'll have you back on for sure. And so you mentioned fear, and it's important for all of us at Community for International Arab that the one thing that always conquers fear is love. And the love that we have for our culture, the love that we have for one another, no matter your religion, what country, no matter where you are. Qulna dawla wahad. Did I say that right, Mira?
Yes.
Arabi's getting better. And so for us to remember that as long as we continue to love one another and embrace one another and honor all of this beautiful chaos that we're in right now, we can get to the vision that Mehdi, I hold the same vision that a generation or two from now, we will be able to come together to see one another's light. As you all know, our tagline here at Community for International Arab is Nawar Titnawar, that the light in me sees the light in you. Mehdi, I see your light. Mira, thank you always. I see your light. I see the light in all of you. And together, we will uplift one another, but we must come from a place of recognizing that our feelings are important. Okay? And we begin to understand those feelings, and we need to pace ourselves, and that this cultural alignment that we're seeking will take time, and to be patient with ourselves. All right. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for everyone that's supporting the live, that supports our platform. We really appreciate you. And next Wednesday, we'll see you again. 8 a.m. PDT for another topic on Community International Arab.
I didn't get time to tell them the Ariella news because the topic was too like emotional and we were too focused, but I have to because so many people asked in the comments about one-on-one coaching and the support group. Everything is always in the link in our bio. So if you just go to our bio, you'll find the link tree. Once you click on that, you'll be able to see all the details and you'll be able to book through it. And if you have any more questions, always feel free to DM us and I'll be here to help.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, wherever you are in the world, I wish you a very great evening, great day. Mahdi, thank you for your energy, your guidance, your wisdom, all the work that you do. And let us continue on our path for healing. Take care, everyone. Have a good one.